When we look into the near future, not the far abstract future, although I love considering those things, in the near future, what should consumers specifically be aware of, and what are some steps that they could use to identify, hey, password stuffing is happening, okay, I want to stop this, I want to protect my information? What are some steps that consumers can use?
So I think there's steps you can do defensively, and I think we sort of walked through those already, but reactively, I think you look for a lot of the same things you'd look for in normal fraud, right? Which is, are weird things happening on my accounts? Do I have accounts that do strange and unusual things? Do I have accounts that really I shouldn't even have anymore? Sometimes we sign up with a retailer, we create an account, we give them a credit card, but then we don't use it for years. At some point you should go in and say, let me just disable that account. I don't need it anymore, and it represents part of my attack surface that's uninteresting. It would be sort of like leaving your wallet in a house that you stopped living in. And at some point you say, let me go and clean up that house and make sure there's nothing still there anymore. So it's a sort of a prophylactic measure people can take. But often detecting these is really hard, because you're sitting here, you're saying, I'm doing my job, I can connect into my email, somebody else also happens to be inside my mailbox. That's a weird thing. You can look for messages that are odd coming to you. See if one of your partners has been compromised. So if you get email that looks suspicious, even if it's from your CEO, question it. If the CEO reaches out to you and says, hey, Dan, I've got this great deal going on and there's nobody you can tell, pick up the phone and call them. Because if you have that level of confidence between the two of you, making a voice connection is probably the right step to do at this point. At Akamai, we gave to our financial team, we gave them the guidance. We said, look, if anybody ever tells you that you're working on a deal that's so hush-hush that you can't tell the CFO or the general counsel or the chief security officer, in advance, we're telling you now you have to go tell them. There's nothing that's ever going to be that hush-hush. So that's helped by empowering people to recognize the unusual in their environment and not to react to it with, sort of blithely.
That's great advice. Last question for you. What scares you?
I think a lot of things scare me, but I think the biggest one really is complexity. Our systems now have become so increasingly complex that it's very hard for any user, whether they're skilled in the field or not, to look at a system and really understand the risk that they're taking. It seems an odd thing to be worried about, but when you consider, like on a car, many years ago the Ford Pinto was probably the poster child for sort of unsafe vehicles, and yet we can explain what happened in the Ford Pinto in very simple terms. They put the gas tank right in front of the rear bumper. Right? And everybody can look at that, and whether you're an automotive engineer or you understand explosives or mechanics, you can recognize the design failure. But a few years ago, it was all over the stunt hijacking of the Jeep Grand Cherokee, where they took it over at speed as it's driving down the highway. And I am hard-pressed to explain simply what went wrong there. Right? Which means that an average user trying to look at the world and make a wiser risk choice is presented with a world where risk choices are completely opaque to them. And that means we're going to make more and more choices that are risky, not intentionally, but just blithely. And we'll think we're not as unsafe as we really are. And that means our risk profile doesn't actually match where we want to be.